it is, the 115 flight, like clockwork. Every single time, without fail. Every single time. It's so silly! Hi, I'm Abby. I have a lot of feathers. I also have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the who, what, when, where, why, and how do I feel about classic albums in my collection. If 30-minute episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds here on my channel, over on my Instagram, as well as TikTok. We couldn't make it this far into the summer without covering an artifact of the Summer of Love, now could we? This week's album was one of the last of that fabled period before the hippies' flowers wilted and the acid turned brown. And come on, it's this channel, so of course it was gonna be Clapton's interpretation of the Summer of Love. It's my comfort zone and I get to choose the music. Forgive me if things are a little loopy around here, I'm still recovering from inhaling all of those Aquanet fumes last week. This week's album is Cream, Disraeli Gears. Congrats to those who guessed this one. Remember, if you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my community tab. That's where I post my hints to what next week's album is gonna be. I host polls where sometimes you get to pick what's on the show. I make announcements when I'm places that aren't here, like on my podcast. You can find all of that on my channel. All right, let's take the plastic off. So my copy right here is one of two, both are represses. This crinkly boy right here was my first one. This is a later RSO repress. The reason it's not coming out of this plastic is because I played it so much that the sleeves split all the way around. I think I bought this from a Newberry Comics somewhere off the highway in New Hampshire. I don't remember. Since I played this one so much that all the grooves are pretty much worn together, here is the copy I used this week. I got this 1969 repress from Armageddon Records in Providence, Rhode Island. Man, they treated me well at that place. If you're a metalhead or you're into punk or you just want to find some obscure shit, Armageddon is the place to be. Both of my copies are in stereo, and herein lies the issue. Stereo was still in its very infancy in the 1960s. I don't think producers and engineers had it totally worked out until after it was the industry standard. With Disraeli Gears on mono, you get a better idea of what the instruments are doing, but you're missing out on a lot of the intended wacky psychedelic effects. With these early mixes, there is no clear-cut way to get the full Disraeli Gears experience. I have this same problem with Are You Experienced? We had this same problem with Sgt. Pepper's until the 2017 stereo. You kinda have to pick your poison. I chose stereo, more on that later. For now, let's talk about this cover art. The insane Disraeli Gears cover design was by Martin Sharp, who also illustrated for Wheels of Fire. Don't believe me? Open up the gatefold, it's a perfect match to what's going on here. Martin was a friend of another Martin in the Eric Clapton extended cinematic universe, Eric's then-girlfriend, Charlotte Martin. She was a model and knew lots of artsy people from the scene, including Martin Sharp, who at the time was illustrator for Oz magazine. He wrote the lyrics for Tales of Brave Ulysses on a napkin, no less, and when he found out it was gonna be on the record, he used those lyrics for inspiration, and here is what we got. Man, this jacket is crazy. It is right up there with Axis. I also want to give a quick shout to this art. I found this, like, instrumental recording compilations record at a thrift store, and I picked it up because this is either heavily inspired by Peter Max or it is a Peter Max. I don't know, I just think the world was so much more colorful back then. We need to bring the psychedelic 60s back. This bright pink with neon orange and yellow against that acid green is wild. Martin was at least 15 years ahead of the curve with the whole neons thing. It's interesting to note the only color not represented is purple. I guess he didn't dig the tiny purple fishes line as much as I did. He wanted to capture the, quote, warm electric sound of Cream's music. These portraits of the guys were based on publicity shots taken by Bob Whitaker. Yes, the photographer of the infamous Butcher cover. While all these floral accents were copied from design books, the wings are from an Albrecht Dürer he saw in an art history textbook, I think. The very organic design was inspired by Martin's recent trip to Cambodia. Quote, there were these amazing sculptures with faces on each side and huge trees growing out on top. Over the years, these great trees had taken root and grown. I suppose I thought that was a bit like the band, where you could see three faces and the music coming out of their heads. From this quote, I can only imagine the copious amounts of LSD Martin was dealing with. This jacket is also so funny. Right here is a copy of Botticelli's Venus. As a callback to the lyric, her name is Aphrodite and she rides a crimson shell, but Martin gave her the devil horns and mustache treatment by giving her a lazy eye. This cross-eyed Venus inspired an unknown artist to create this poster for Cream's 1968 gig at the Electric Factory in Philly. Their support act was Woody's Truck Stop, featuring a 20-year-old Todd Rundgren. So sorry for the tangent, I just love how insular the world of 60s rock and roll was. Like, all my faves knew each other, and I think that's so cool. As soon as I saw this photo shoot of the guys in the Scottish Highlands, I knew I'd seen it somewhere before. And that's because I had some of those photos crop up on the back cover collage. On Disraeli gears, we have Cream, which consisted of Jack Bruce on lead vocals, bass, and harmonica, Ginger Baker on drums and lead vocals for Blue Condition, and cue the audio joke, Eric Clapton on guitar, lead vocals on Strange Brew and Outside Woman Blues, and co-lead on Sunshine of Your Love, World of Pain, and Dance the Night Away. Our main guest lyricists are poet Pete Brown and our producer Felix Pappalardi. Disraeli Gears was engineered by Tom Dowd. Roll transition. Firstly, that title. Disraeli Gears is named after British PM Benjamin Disraeli, kind of. According to Ginger, the guys were chatting with their roadie Mick Turner. Eric was talking about getting a racing bicycle. I cannot imagine this man on a bike. Just leave it to Syd Barrett. Mick was behind the wheel. He couldn't hear what was going on in the back seat to begin with. His mind is in two different places at once right now, and instead of derailleur gears, like the gears on a bike, he said with full confidence, "Oh, Disraeli gears." In accordance with Eric being super into Dadaism, an absurdist art movement that gained serious traction with the psych crowd in the 60s, Disraeli Gears doesn't mean anything. The guys just thought it was stupid and made it the album title. Speaking of being on the road, Cream became one of the busiest bands in the world in 1967. Robert Stigwood toured these boys until they broke. Cream's United States debut did not go well. Just like The Who, Cream were booked to play Murray the K's roster of live shows, but as we know from the Who Sell Out episode, there were at least 6 groups on the bill every night, so they were totally shafted. They could only play 1 song per set, 2 if they were lucky, and they weren't willing to bust up their instruments to get attention, because they had beautiful instruments, some of the most beautiful in the world. A handful of non-musicians were now huge names in the London underground music scene. Well, they will be musicians themselves in a couple years, but I already told you that story a few months ago. Through mutual friends Simon Hayes and Barry Finch, Marika and Simone land a job designing promo material for Cream's first tour of the States. They take their patronage to the next level by commissioning custom instruments. She painted the front of the instruments while he painted the back, plus the fretboards. Simone originally did them up in this rainbow gradient, but SG necks are hard enough to navigate as is, so that paint was removed. Here's Marika's recollection of the day of the photo shoot. Quote, "Before their departure to America, visiting Eric's Spartan pad, everyone sat on the floor toking joints and listening to his blues record collection of artists like Sonny Boy Williamson and Robert Johnson, with other visitors, among whom his girlfriend Charlotte Martin and Jimi Hendrix. The costumes didn't get much use after this US tour, but the instruments did. Clapton would play this Fool SG throughout the whole recording of Disraeli Gears." So we're through with the making of the instruments, onto the making of the album. After Fresh Cream initially underperformed, Robert Stigwood got in touch with Atlantic exec Ahmet Erdogan. Stigwood arranged for Cream to record at Atlantic's facilities in New York City. The operation was brought across the pond due in part to studios at home being considered too primitive. Try telling that to the guys at EMI. They churned out Piper, Peppers, and Odyssey in a matter of months. Behind the scenes, Robert and Ahmet are really trying for Eric to be the new frontman of Cream. To appease mom and dad, Eric comes up with Lordy Mama to sing. Ginger also comes up with Blue Condition for Eric to sing, but he was like, nah man, you should take that one instead, and now everyone is the lead singer of Cream. Cream's Lordy Mama is an approximation of the Junior Wells Buddy Guy recording of the song, plus a Muddy Waters tune thrown in there. Then you have the solo, which is literally Albert King's Oh Pretty Woman. Making this Lordy Mama a bona fide Franken blues monster. Then producer Felix Pappalardi hears the playback. He's not just a producer though, he's a classically trained musician, a bassist, and a lyricist. He offered up a new set of lyrics for Lordy Mama. Strange brew, kill what's inside of you. Thus, Lordy Mama wasn't Lordy Mama at all anymore. It was hardly Lordy Mama to begin with, if we're being honest. Tales of Brave Ulysses went through a fair amount of Frankensteining as well. Martin Sharp wrote it around the melody of Judy Collins's cover of Suzanne by Leonard Cohen, but Eric wrote the riff as an approximation of the Lovin' Spoonful's Summer in the City.
Hot town, summer in the city, back of my neck getting dirt and gritty. Touch the distant beaches with tales of brave Ulysses.
The other blues tune Eric brought in was Blind Joe Reynolds' Outside Woman Blues. This one wasn't changed much at all. Eric chose it specifically for the lick. He thought it would sound good on his big amp. Back when Cream had just started recording their first album, the Byrds dropped Fifth Dimension. It was one of the first albums you could file under the psych category. It made big waves on both sides of the pond. Pete Brown wrote the lyrics of Dance the Night Away as an expression of unreality after he quit the SID. Jack and Eric turned that into a nod to 8 Miles High. Jack Bruce is on a roll right now. This was a very creatively fruitful time for him. He wrote We're Going Wrong after a fight with his then wife, then Take It Back as half protest song, half expression of fear that the band were in America so much they'd get drafted. That is not how that works. Jack also wrote Weird of Hermiston and The Clear Out for this album. Both were shelved in favor of other compositions, and a couple years later, Jack records them by himself. What we hear on Disraeli Gears was recorded in a matter of days in May of 1967. Why did they have to rush? Because according to Tom Dowd, the guy's work visas expired in 3 days. That's a pretty hard deadline if you ask me. Felix is a really interesting presence through Disraeli's sessions. He's sort of a jack of all trades, can play both sides of the fence. Or both sides of the glass in this case. He was also the one who took Eric to Manny's 48th Street Instruments. The guy working at the shop that day was like, "Hey man, I loved your last record. Here's this new thing I just got in. It makes your guitar sound like it's crying." Eric loved it, picked one up on the spot, and that wah-wah pedal is all over Tales of Brave Ulysses. As for engineer Tom Dowd, this was his first project with Clapton. They'd worked together for years to come on both Disraeli's follow-up, sorry, we got a lot of albums cooking over here, Wheels of Fire, and a number of Clapton's most notable projects. Of this producer-engineer duo, Tom was the real master of sound. He'd recorded Charlie Mingus, John Coltrane, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles. Sometimes I forget how much older he is than the rest of the guys until I read his resume. And wait, hold the fucking phone. Tom Dowd worked on the Manhattan Project? Despite having conducted cutting-edge research to assist in the building of a literal actual bomb, Tom had no idea how to record Cream at first. These guys were playing 100-watt Marshall stacks. You couldn't just hear them from outside the studio. You could hear them from several blocks away. Tom had a serious learning curve, and Ahmet cited these guys for his partial deafness. Amidst the chaos and blowing of eardrums, the guys needed just one more song to fill out the length of a standard LP. Pete and Jack elect to stay up all night and write it. As the story goes, Jack is noodling around on a double bass. Pete says, "Oh man, it's getting near dawn." Hold on. In their sleep-deprived delirium, they worked out the bones of Cream's greatest hit.
There just wasn't this common ground like they had on so many of the other songs. And I was listening to what they were playing, and I said, you know, have you ever seen any American westerns, the Indian beat, where the downbeat is the beat? It's dunk, 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 dunk.
The next morning, Eric literally couldn't think of a solo and just played Blue Moon note for note.
Blue Moon.
Despite all these breakthroughs in the studio, Ahmet still largely wrote off the rest of the guys in favor of Eric. It seems Clapton wasn't only God, he was the favorite child too. The track listing of Disraeli Gears goes as follows. Opening up side 1, we have Strange Brew, followed by Sunshine of Your Love, then World of Pain, next Dance the Night Away, and side 1 closes with Blue Condition. Opening up side 2, we have Tales of Brave Ulysses, followed by Gimme an S, S, Gimme a W, W, Gimme an L, L, Gimme an A, A, gimme a B, B, gimme an R, R. What's that spell? I have no fucking idea! Not even Cream themselves could decide how this title was pronounced. But we do know what it stands for. She was like a bearded rainbow. Coming after whatever the hell that is, we have We're Going Wrong, followed by Outside Woman Blues, then Take It Back, and the album closes with Mother's Lament. Disraeli Gears was released in November of 1967. Strange Brew was the promo single in June. It did alright, but got lost in the shuffle of all of the stuff that was happening in June of 1967. The real hit of the bunch was Sunshine of Your Love. It got the single treatment in late December, made it onto the charts in the beginning of '68, and climbed slowly but steadily for months until peaking at number 5 on the Billboard charts the week of August 31st. And it's got that utterly incomprehensible shit on the B-side. The A-side was covered by everyone from Jimi Hendrix
When lights grow the tired eye.
The Fifth Dimension. Noel Redding reviewed their rendition in Melody Maker. In more recent years, Santana and Ozzy have taken stabs at it. Cream were touring these songs long before they made it onto the record. Though their debut did not go so well, America eventually warmed right up to Cream, playing iconic venues like Bill Graham's Fillmore. The band and a rare appearance of all three Fool-designed instruments are in the 1968 Danish film On a Saturday Night. The guys played World of Pain on some kind of parade float. We're Going Wrong appears in the movie as well. Those instruments, the Fool SG in particular, become some of the Fool's best known work. In 2019, the SG plus Jack's bass were part of an exhibit at the fucking Met. In November of last year, the Fool SG went up for auction, where it sold for $1.27 million, making it one of the most expensive guitars ever auctioned. This thing sold more than the gold-finish Les Paul Dwayne Allman recorded Layla with. The sound of the SG on this album, the woman tone as it's called, garnered so much reverence over the years that ACLA made a woman tone pedal. Who but Mariah Coger did the design. Disraeli Gears is a rare example of equal success on both sides of the pond. It peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 album charts and 5 in Britain. Its songs have a lasting presence in popular media. Just take a listen to this.
And asked a local guitarist to try it out. He seemed quite impressed. So far then, the little Kia is passing all our tests.
And in 2013, Korean director Bong Joon-ho pulled off one of the strangest but best needle drops in all of film history, using Strange Brew in his adaptation of Snowpiercer. This stuff even had a lasting presence within Cream's own canon. The boys weren't quite done with Tales of Brave Ulysses yet. They took the music, had Jack and Pete write a new set of lyrics, and got their other greatest hit, White Room. You already know how I feel about Wheels of Fire, so what do I think of Disraeli Gears? Going in, the last time I considered Disraeli Gears was in December when I very nearly covered this album instead of Wheels of Fire. I swapped them out because this just didn't grab me then. Something about Wheels of Fire's messiness interested me more. But this past spring, I went on a VH1 Classic Albums viewing spree. Thank you Tubi for hosting most of them for free. I have to say, their feature on Disraeli Gears from just after the Royal Albert Hall reunion gigs totally changed my perspective on this album. That being said, I have some notes. I'm gonna get my 3 biggest critiques out of the way. Number 1, to a modern day listener, this might seem simple. Jack agreed, quote, "I think it's got a lot to do with the simplicity of the times. If you hear one of those songs, it sounds like the 60s, but without the..." But you have to remember, Jimi Hendrix and Cream were 2 of the heaviest groups on the mainstream market back then. These guys, plus the Yardbirds, set the bar, or more so, started a game of heaviness capture the flag that would get really heated through '68. This stuff was way heavier live. See Grandy Ulysses, Sunshine, every single We're Going Wrong ever. This stuff sounds better the louder you play it. Number 2, Cream doesn't always work for me because they had no ground wire. It's 3 guys all soloing at once. Sometimes it's awesome and sometimes it's a mess. You can't rehearse a group of guys into natural chemistry. It's no secret these guys had tempestuous personal relationships behind the scenes, surely not helped by Robert Stigwood and Ahmet Erdogan inserting themselves into the dynamic, trying to shove Eric into the frontman slot. For a band of 3 people, there were a whole lot of cooks in the kitchen. By the time Wheels of Fire rolls around, there were too many. Everyone's throwing so many influences into the pot. In the words of David Frick, quote, "Cream's idea of blues was purple."
No, it had some polka dots in it.
I just want to be David Frick when I grow up, okay? I want teeth so good that people are afraid to disagree with my opinions. And rounding out my trio of complaints, this album's production, it's not good. Disraeli Gears is absolutely a victim of early stereo technology for some godforsaken reason. The drums were shoved all the way to the right channel. It completely degrades the effect of Ginger's drumming style, which was very heavy on the toms and the cymbals as opposed to the snare. Did Felix hate Ginger personally? Because that's the only explanation I can come up with for this. For the most part, I can forgive these hiccups. Stereo technology was still in its infancy in the summer of love, and quite frankly, technology on both sides of the pond hadn't caught up to what groups like The Cream or The Experience were doing. Disraeli Gears comes out swinging with Strange Brew. This guitar tone, especially the fact that it's called the woman tone, is not helping my theory that every guitarist models their licks after that one nagging girlfriend they had. It was a bold choice to kick off their record with an Eric cut instead of a Jack, but I think he was the right choice to sing Strange Brew. Felix's vibrant lyrics of a witch of trouble and electric blue, in her own mad mind, she's in love with you. God, that is one of my favorite song lyrics, hands down, come to life with Eric's cool, smooth delivery. For a relative newbie at the mic, his falsetto is easy on the ears. Jack's solo behind Eric's modest Albert King tribute is rubbery. It's got a trampoline-like valence to it. For all the clashing solos Cream were prone to, this duo chooses to exact some restraint. I hate that Ginger was figuratively and literally sat in the corner of this mix. His favor of the toms peppers Strange Brew with the hollow texture needed to balance out this song's hot, humid, swampy feel. The warm electric sound. I keep hearing something on Sunshine of Your Love, and I can't tell if it's just me or if it's a real thing that's on the record. Does anybody else hear that intermittent rattling? It sounds like someone's necklace or maybe beads on the front door. There's also some ghost vocals of somebody shouting through the last verse. I know one of the biggest Cream criticisms is Jack doesn't have the voice for the blues. They're right. He didn't, but it's part of the reason why Cream was so intriguing. Jack had this really tight vibrato. See him belting out, I think it's pretty obvious what this song is about. He had fabulous control over his falsetto and an androgynous tone. I associate none of that with the blues, but Jack's vocals were one of the ways Cream broke the mold. This riff is just ridiculous. Shout out to Jack for coming up with this bass line so that it could become the riff. I really dig Eric's slight variations on it. It's a subtle harmony which honors and highlights this stupidly good core riff. No sense in trying to compete with it. And the fact that one of the greatest guitar solos ever put to tape is goddamn Blue Moon is so funny to me. If anything, I feel like the guys might have held back on this one. If Jimmy's renditions were any indication, Sunshine has the potential to be really gritty and bossy. It kinda gets there with that sustain chord and Ginger happily battering away at his kit. World of Pain is one of a handful of terribly underrated cuts on Disraeli Gears. I didn't fully appreciate it until researching the Fool video. That's where I came across that scene from On a Saturday Night. Ginger shifts the beginning of the phrase each time he plays that fill. It's a nice, thoughtful touch that keeps an otherwise understated song moving. 1967 was the year crazy guitar effects exploded onto the scene. Fuzz boxes, wah-wahs, all that crazy shit Jimmy was using. I know Ulysses gets all the love for its use of the wah-wah pedal, but Eric's making this really cool watery sound here. He cuts that with a sharp, angular rhythm line that gives the song a little oomph. There's a lot of duality happening on World of Pain. Soft and hard, smooth and rough, double-tracked solos, and a duet. Jack and Eric sound great on this. For the longest time, I thought it was just Jack singing.
I can hear all the cries of the city.
Is goofy but charming. Dance the Night Away isn't my favorite thing here, but it's not bad at all. I really like the jangly thing the Byrds did. It was great when the Beatles did it. It was still great when Cream did it. But this tonal brightness and snappy, intricate manner of playing doesn't feel like Cream or Eric Clapton at all. The man's nickname was Slowhand. Different is good, Eric. Dance the Night Away's got a great mid-60s groove. Those exotic trills happening are one of my favorite artifacts of this era. Blue Condition. It's here. Good job, Ginger. Moving on to the reason I'm making this whole video, Tales of Brave Ulysses. God, this song does atmosphere like no other on Disraeli Gears. It starts with this bright burst of a chord, then descends into the murky waters through the first verse. You thought the leaden winter would lead you down forever, but you rode upon a steamer to the violence of the sun. One hell of an opening line! Martin Sharp killed this totally psychedelic interpretation of the epic of Ulysses. Crimson, the colors of the sea, purple fishes, white-laced lips, a girl's brown body. You can see this song as you hear it. The composition does just as good a job at storytelling, snapping you in and out of the haze with these wailing guitar lines. Ginger's fills are razor sharp. Eric is going nuts on the solos. He was such a crazy perfectionist player at this time. But again, this song was so much better the heavier it got. I find myself craving a derailment a la Deserted Cities of the Heart. When asked about Jack simply said, tracks? It's an absurdist description of a breakup. The girl is Mona Lisa and you're drawing a mustache on her picture. The rainbow has a beard or whatever. Of all the solos on the album, this is the one I feel doesn't get enough attention. The double-tracked solo clambers all over itself. I love the lines, "You're coming to me with that soulful look on your face. You come in looking like you never ever done one wrong thing." Describing the puppy dog face in this way just sticks in my head.
With that soulful look on your face.
Besides World of Pain, We're Going Wrong is the other underrated track. Again, it sounds so much better when it's louder and heavier, and Jack got shouty. See the Royal Albert Hall recording. But this is the song where the wonky mix actually works. Eric and Jack play these sparse, big, open chords while Ginger's off to the side, giving it the momentum. He's playing the centrifugal force, a spiraling not unlike the undoing of a marriage. Is it the calm before the storm or the barren wasteland after? It's an uneasy, stomach-churning tune. If you lose your money, great God, don't lose your mind, and if you lose your woman, please don't fool with mine. Eric, I gotta say, it's pretty bold of you to bring outside woman blues to the table when you yourself had so little respect for the institution of marriage. Or rather, your best friend's marriage. Abby, don't bring up Eric stealing his best friend's wife every single time George or Eric comes up on this channel challenge. Impossible, apparently. Blatant hypocrisy aside, Outside Woman is the most blues cut here. Eric has a feel for what blues tunes will translate best as blues rock. He did it with Crossroads, he did it with Have You Ever Loved a Woman, and he did it with Outside Woman. This shuffle and that lick just work. The solo is precise and articulate as hell, but his vocals aren't quite up to the bar he set in the earlier cuts. He didn't get the soul in his voice for a few more years. Take It Back is a goofy faux live vamp about wanting to rip up your draft card. Both faux live and its subject matter make it very much an artifact of its time. Jack's swinging through this thing on the axe. His harmonica playing doesn't totally suck, and he delivers this song with the humor needed. Don't let them take me, cause I'm easily scared. While Eric does a percussive keyboard-like thing through the verses, we cap off Disraeli Gears with one of the most baffling album closers in all of rock and roll history. There is no goddamn way this thing was recorded sober. This is drunk British man behavior. This is some shit that would play over a cartoon that looks like this. That is all I have to say about Mother's Lament. To the white boy blues scene in Britain in the 60s, Cream were a supergroup. 2 blues breakers, one of them dubbed God, and a jazz drummer. They had pedigree, clout if you will. If you ask me, the Clapton supergroup didn't come around until Blind Faith, when you had Traffic Singer, the family's bassist, and 2 ex-members of Cream. Disraeli Gears, though, is the album of a super group. They cut out a lot of the improvisation and a lot of the blues. I feel that might have been an overcorrection from Fresh Cream. But these 3 to 4 minute songs are packed to the gills with memorable riffs, a balanced rhythm section, and some of the most 1967 lyrics you'll ever find. Formulaic as it can be, the interest level doesn't slip. These are capable musicians who can take this format, blues with purple polka dots, to its maximum potential, which they did very quickly. Though it wouldn't last more than a few months, Cream found their voice as a group. And in that all too brief sweet spot, they churned out some of the fattest, funkiest, greatest tunes psych rock had to offer. Disraeli Gears is all killer with filler. My personal favorites off this one are Strange Brew, Sunshine of Your Love, World of Pain, Tales of Brave Ulysses, and Outside Woman Blues. Remember, if you want to keep up with all of my favorites from all of the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week. And that's it! That is my grand return to the 60s after a very eventful couple weeks. That was Disraeli Gears. What do you think of this album? What do you think of Cream? Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums that I love. And remember, despite what some guy on the internet has to say, your opinion matters. If you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday every Monday morning at 11. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week for... Oh, this is gonna get weird!